We're now live. What's happening? It's Robert Phoenix, and here to hang out with you for another hour, maybe 2 hours worth of astrology. And welcome to Sunday Night Astro Live. We do this every Sunday night. We get in some astrology and kick some stuff around and try to come up with. Man, I'm looking a little ragged tonight. It's all right. I decided to throw on something comfortable. We're going to kick around some interesting material. And one of the things that I wanted to cover tonight is the moon. Because, the moon is an interesting object, isn't it? And we're gonna get into it a little bit tonight. And I want to talk about the moon as it relates to astrology, because we've talked about the rising sign before. We've talked about the sun sign. I'm not going to go through every sign, but I will get into the sort of the essence and the definition of the moon, and in a lot of ways why it is the most paradoxical of all the planets that we deal with in terms of the interpretation of astrology. All right, let's see. Who do we have here tonight? There's Jennifer Fitzgerald, 10 Dragon, Justice Moody. There's Joan S. Faith's RV trip. Faith, I will get to you tonight as soon as I finish the show. You have my word. Lindsay CG in the house. Sandra Wells, what's going on, cuz? Let's see. PB is here. Hello, PB. Up 77. There's Christy. Hello, Christy. Double V in the house. There's my man Ryan Soleil. All right, what's going on, Soleil? Hope you're doing all right in Australia. I haven't jumped down the rabbit hole of Australia lately, but I am looking. Well, I'm not looking forward to it. It's pretty fucking depressing. But I do want to catch up on all of the wonderful things that Dan Andrews and Scott Morrison are doing. Z's here. There she is. Ani Brito. What's going on, Ani? Nice to see you. I hope you're feeling better. Casey and Lex. Hey, Casey and Lex in the house. Let's see. Raven Rain. What's going on, Raven? I have been thinking about you. Are you still in Seattle? Question mark. Let's see. Natasha Lloyd is here. The tree climber, Natasha Lloyd. Steve Mercer, my man Steve, Thor by the door. What's going on, Steve? Miss you, buddy. Nancy Hardy here. There's Joe Mama. Hi, Joe. Good to see you. Sandra L. coming in from Arizona. Raven says, always listening. I am feeling better. Good. I'm glad. We want you to feel great. JMP sent me some killer dice. I got the Astro dice. There is Maury Demare. Let's see. Jacqueline, you'll find this to be really interesting. So on my solar return chart for the year, I have Neptune and Pisces in my first house for the solar return chart. And so I asked those dice, what about the coming year? I got Neptune, Pisces, house 1. How about that for synchronicity? Gucci to Goats, what's going on? I hope to have Gucci and Goats on a show at some point in the future. If reality unfolds the way it's been unfolding, I think I might. I think I just might. And a very good story there. I miss everyone. We miss you too. Lois Wolf in the house. Hi, Lois. Let's see. I guess Dawn's father's having a hard time. So I hope she's doing okay. And, these are challenging times, especially when we have to deal with older people. And if they're in a state where, it's not all happy with going to see folks. Right. So, but I think Dawn's father's here in Texas. It might be a little bit easier. Yeah, I got my dice validation. Yeah, I'm not sure I like the dice validation. I'm not sure how I feel about having Neptune in my first house in my solar return in Pisces. Not sure about that. I guess I'll find out. Akaida, what's happening? There he is, my man, Masaki. Let's see. Miranda Couch is here. Hi, Miranda. Lils is here. Jazz Freak from Buffalo. What kind of jazz are you into, Jazz Freak? Some of my favorite concerts have been live jazz. Some of the best. Some of the best. I would like the dice links. Maybe Jacqueline can stick a link in there. Harry Sorensen from the mountains of Colorado. Welcome. There's Susie. You don't give the planet, give the outer planet so much. Oh, good. Well, good. I'm so glad. I don't have to give Neptune that much credibility. Susie, the Sea Dragon is in. There's Robbie Chopra. Kestrel, what's going on? Kestrel, good to see you. Shay Michelle coming to us from the Dallas area, the North Dallas 40. Deanna M. went to a gathering last night with family, 16 plus people, most obviously no mask. I talk about it. Great time. Well, got a little on the ground observations today from Kerrville. We took a little trip to the old Walmart there in Kerrville in search of a plastic kiddie pool so we could do some planting. Kiddie pools make pretty good planters. Just got to drill some holes in them. And man, blown away by how few people were wearing masks. Blown away. It was good. It was really, really good. Went to a gun show, 80%. No, I'm telling you, man, the mask magic is wearing off. The mask magic is wearing off. Our ascendant sun house and Mars placements, and of course, sun's aspects. Yep. Yep. Because it's a solar return. And you're looking at the solar aspects. Maskville here in Scottsdale, Arizona. Yeah, it was really encouraging to see the hordes of the maskless now. They're starting to come out. Who has officially reversed the position on these strict lockdowns. Duncan O'Finian in the house. What's going on? Good to see you, Duncan. Hope all is well. Mask magic hasn't come to Boulder. It is on its way. Slowly, the wave is rippling. It is rippling in your direction. People apparently in Louisiana have said, fuck the mask. There are people all over Louisiana now. They're just not wearing the mask. I think we're getting ready to hit. We're getting ready to hit now. Critical mask, right? Critical mask is what I'm going to call it. I think now just when we get there, of course, they'll probably unleash some other fucking nasty thing. When do I predict the mask will go away? That's a good question. I was actually thinking about that, Rob. Well, it depends on where you are. Like in terms of Liz, this is our friend Liz A down in, if I'm not mistaken, down in the South Pacific. And I don't think the masks are coming off anytime soon in New Zealand or Australia. I think that, in fact, the idea here is that they want to keep the masks on for till at least 2025. That's what I think. Bite my tongue, RP. Why should I bite my tongue? I bit my tongue before and it hurts. Meaning not here meaning here, not commie land. Yeah. Been trying to think about this and really trying to wrap my head around the timing of it. We'll take a look at Mercury retrograde tonight because I think Mercury retrograde will provide us with some clues around the mask story. I also feel like the 21st of December is a really, really, really big day. We've got the solstice happening that day. We've got the super conjunction happening that day. Theoretically, it's supposed to be the real end of the Mayan calendar. There's also a large number of planets that are in a very specific alignment called the anomaly. So I'm looking at December 21st. Now, look, here's the deal. The mask is a vital component when it comes to the selling of the plan for the fourth industrial revolution, the resets, and also this idea that that they want to be able to essentially, how do I say this? There's a link between the wearing of the mask and the erasure of history or the erasure of culture. Because the mask is that indeterminate state, right? It is that in between state. Because at some point, the mask has to come off. At some point, it has to come off. And when it comes off, the world will be theoretically different and anew. We've talked about this before. This is the Janus ritual, right? This is why we did what we did in the Hill Country. And I didn't show you guys this before. I tried to do it on Friday, but for whatever reason, my computer got hung up, and I wasn't able to really give this thing the kind of the credit that it deserves as just a really kind of amazing structure that we were able to kind of go into. So let me show you guys where we were. And so this is where we were on what was that? The second, right? It was on the second. So this is called the Stonehenge of the Hill Country. And what we did is, I'll use this photo here, the eighth wonder of the world. So essentially what we did, this is the parking lot, and we entered in from, if I'm not mistaken, this gate, which was at 119 degrees. What is that? Northeast, if I'm not mistaken. Right? No, I think it was this one, 119 degrees east. So we came in through this one right here, and I looked this up on the compass on the phone because I wanted kind of a 9/11, a bit of a 9/11 reference. And so we came in, or 11/9, we came in, and then the first thing we did was we wound up doing 3 circles around this, right, counterclockwise, okay, because we were winding time back. And you can see that we have all these really interesting images of Gemini, right? These are more than just images. These are actual structures. And so the idea was to wind the time back because this is a Janus space. We were in the Janus space. And so once we did the 3 counterclockwise turns, we stopped in the center. And by the way, again, we're all wearing masks. That was part, but these were different kinds of masks. These weren't like these kinds of masks. They were complete face masks. And then I said a few things about the mask within, the mask without, and then we began to wind time forward, right? So then we began to go clockwise for 3 turns. So we wound time back, we wound time forward, and then I believe, if I'm not mistaken, we exited out of this gate, and this was at 311 degrees northeast. So we went in at 11/9 or 119. That's when Trump was elected. And then we exited really at 311 or 311. So the idea, and then as we exited, we took the masks off. And this was the idea that on a symbolic level, we could perhaps energetically create a bit of a spin. And I think certainly for the people that attended the event, it was actually kind of a cool thing to do, just so you could drop your mask, prior to the event, right? So it's the Stonehenge, the Hill Country. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that is Maki Maki. You see him. Could be I think he's an Easter Island guy. And we talked about Maki Maki last week. So there you go. And what's interesting, I'm not saying we had anything to do with it, but the amount of people that were running around Kerrville without masks was significant. Like the last time we were in Walmart, which is not often, by the way, I think there was about 90% mass penetration. And Today, I think it was about maybe, I don't know, maybe 60% or 65% max. So something is changing, something is shifting. We'll take a look at Mercury retrograde tonight, and we'll jump into it, and we'll see what Mercury retrograde looks like in terms of the demasking, as it were. So let's see what else we have here. Yeah, I have a hazmat suit. Yeah, I definitely have a hazmat suit. Now, they were all wearing visors to the store. Well, the visor is probably better than the mask unless they're doubling up. If they're doubling up, man, then we got an issue. We got ourselves a real issue. Keep the rituals up. You know, I'm not. I don't. You know, I'm not a huge ritual guy. I've been through quite a few of these kinds of, new age rituals back in like the 80s, and usually with with girlfriends, right? You go to the ritual to be a part of it and be a part of the girlfriend thing, sort of. But sometimes I went by myself or was part of a group. And they were okay. They were okay. My favorite was always the sweat lodges. They were the best. They were the best. Hey Don, we're just thinking about you, talking about you. Okay, so I want to do a little prayer here. We'll jump right into the show. Dear blessed and holy Father, Mother God, of the great central sun, within universal light, which is the light of Yeshua, Sananda, Emmanuel, we ask that only the highest, best information, wisdom, and truth come through this channel at this time, and that we're all blessed and graced by the qualities of courage and fortitude, commitment, humor, flexibility, intellect, discernment, compassion, empathy, and above all, love. We ask that any karmic residue be cleansed, purified, removed, and etched out of this transmission, so that we can return to our lives sovereign. Thank you. So be it. All right, let's go. Let's get rolling. Why don't we get into a little chart of the moment here? Let's get cracking. And here we go. All right, let's see now. I might have to make a little bit of an adjustment. What do we got? Yeah, I'm going to make a little bit of an adjustment. Give me 1 second. Uno momentito. Da, 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 da. There we go. Oops, whoops, whoops. Here we go. Let's do this. All right. All right, let's go here. And then let's go here. A little bit different. A little bit different. Okay, so we have the chart of the moment. And I'm just going to jump right into that. Let's do a little screen shareage. And there it is. Okay. So we have Uranus. Our friend Uranus is pretty close to the ascendant. And but for now, tonight, right here. Okay. But the ascendant's moving forward. Uranus is moving backwards. So it's separating. We're still looking at Mars retrograde. And we're getting to that point now where Mars is getting very close. Very, very, very close. And I believe, what is it? Today is what, the 10th? Is that right? Or today's the 11th. So it really, if I'm not mistaken, it's between the 10th and the 13th that spatial Mars gets closer to the Earth than any time. Certainly this year, and again next year, it'll still be in the sky, and we'll still be dealing with the inner planets. But a year from now, it'll be behind the sun. So, of course, theoretically, it is further away. But right now, we are dealing with this intensity of Mars. And we know that the energy of Mars in Aries has been very powerful in a lot of ways. So one of the things I want to talk about tonight is a Mars retrograde event that I'm going to bring to your attention. And I'm not sure where it's going to go. I really have no idea where it's going to go because it's been out there for a while, but it has to do specifically with Benghazi. And this might be the October surprise. Now, I'm not sitting here, banging a drum for that. But it could be. It could be the October surprise. We're going to get into it. It could be the equivalent of WikiLeaks, and it does have to do with Mars retrograde. Okay. And we're already now, Mars has essentially gone into, it's gone past the exact square of Pluto. And now it's essentially headed towards Jupiter. Now, this is interesting on a number of levels because Jupiter, of course, expands things, right? And we see Jupiter here tonight in the ninth house. And what I'm going to be talking about is kind of a ninth house event. Well, more than kind of, it is a ninth house event. So I'm wondering, and today's the day where some of this disclosure is starting to happen. And so as Mars continues to go retrograde and Jupiter continues to move forward, they are again on a collision course, not literally, figuratively, so that the potential for Jupiter to expand this retrograde motion of Mars looking backwards. Now, when Mars went retrograde, one of the things I kept thinking about even before it went retrograde, when we were talking about this, is you go back and listen to what Heather and I were talking about. And one of the things that really jumped out at me was Barack Obama, that this Mars retrograde had something to do with Barack Obama, that we would find something out about Barack Obama with the Mars retrograde. And it's looking more and more like this indeed will be the case. Now, the other thing too is that, we have the sun in Libra, and, I talk a lot of smack about Mars in Libra being the aspect of the SJW, the social justice warrior. And there is some truth to that. Just because you have Mars in Libra doesn't exactly make you that. Of course, charts are more complicated than that. But if there was one aspect, and maybe Mars in Aquarius, but Mars in Aquarius can be very detached in a lot of ways. There's this fervor about Mars in Libra, which is all about justice and balancing the scales and making things equal. So we do see Mars here in its opposite sign going backwards. And, and I do think that we've seen a lot of the negative effects of the social justice warrior movement, intended or otherwise. So I think perhaps on some level that this Mars retrograde has been at the very least illuminating in terms of the violence and the tactics. Now, people who are awake don't have to see that. Okay, we understand that, we know what's going on. There's also this idea that, and I've talked about it before, that when you get into these conflagrations, that they have been essentially not just infiltrated, but in many cases even engineered by intelligence agencies. So, that's been a part of the story as well. And, who is who and what is what on the inside of those groups, and, who's really fomenting the turmoil. So I'm not sure we'll get to the bottom of that. This other story that I'm going to talk about, I think, is perhaps more explosive in a lot of ways. And it really could be, we're always looking for that smoking gun. But there's something about the timing of this, especially with Mars retrograde. I'm going to get into it. In 3 days, we're going to have, let's see, We're going to have, well, it's pretty close. So tomorrow the sun will be at about 20. It'll be 20 Libra. And then the next day, 2 days out, that's that Tuesday, 21. So between now and Tuesday, we're going to have a full on opposition of Mars Sun. That's going to be quite intense. Quite intense. Especially when you throw Jupiter, which is transiting right now and moving forward. I want to do something. Well, you guys look at that. I'm going to go to another browser, and I just want to I want to explore something on this other browser. Give me 1 second here. Because what we want to look at is we want to see where Jupiter and Mars and the Sun are going to be in this T square. So let me just bring this up here real quick. But I want to get as close to it as possible. Okay. So where are we? October, right there. Okay. All right. Let's see. So we're going to get Mars conjuncting the Sun on Wednesday. That's pretty damn close. Wednesday. Jupiter will be at 18, so it's a pretty tight orb. So we're looking at Wednesday the 14th. And Jupiter, finally gets up into the 20-degree range. But by that time, the Sun will be in Scorpio. Mars retrograding and Jupiter are still doing this dance. But Jupiter moves pretty swiftly as Mars retreats. So by the time Mars really moves forward, Jupiter has moved on, right? We're taking Mars in Aries right into the new year. We're gonna ride Mars right through the new year at 26 Aries. We'll look at the Sabian symbol for 26, 27 Aries and see what that portends for New Year's Eve. So it really feels like that the key date here is going to be roughly the 14th. It's going to be the 14th. Now, if we throw the moon in there, I think we're going to get new moon on the 15th. We're going to get new moon on the 15th. And then I think that's, hold on a second. Let me just see this. Hold on a second. No, I take that back. Where are we with the moon? Hold on. Give me 1 second, okay? Because we're going to have, it looks like we're going to have new moon right there. I think this is the month of what the 2 full moons, right? We got blue moons happening this month. The first one we had earlier in the month, and we had it in Aries, right there, and it was on. Let's see, it was on Saturday, right? It was on Saturday when we have Friday and Saturday when we had our event. So the next full moon will be taking place. Let's see, right at the end. Oh man, that's going to be really interesting. Halloween night, 31st. Yep. Sun at 8 Scorpio, and then the moon coming in right there. So that'll be the second moon for the month. Second moon, that's a blue moon, and we all know about the thinning of the veils during that time. That's going to be a very interesting full moon. I don't know. I'm a little. It feels a little creepy to me, actually. It feels kind of creepy, I have to say. But it's a blue moon, and don't be afraid of a blue moon. Although sometimes fated events can happen on blue moons. I've actually experienced a couple. So, but again, we here's what's interesting about this Halloween is is that people wear masks during Halloween. I mean, that's part of the Halloween tradition. And I've seen where some areas are actually considering, canceling Halloween. But this Halloween's an event that the so-called, elites or the dark elites love. They love Halloween. They love that time where the veils are really, really super thin. So it'll be interesting to see how this unfolds. If I were to venture a guess with this Halloween, because this Halloween is just a few days away from the election. This blue moon is just days away from that election, because now we're staring down the first Tuesday where, guess what, the moon is in Gemini. That's only going to be good for Trump. And Mercury, which is retrograde, actually Mercury goes, oh, that's interesting. That's really, really super interesting. On Tuesday, Mercury goes stationary. That's really interesting. Stationary Mercury. People are voting on Mercury when it's stationary. Wow. I'd have to go back and look at when I would bet that there are very few elections that happen, like presidential elections. I'd have to go back. Maybe we'll take a stab at this next week, where station Mercury is election day. It's better than Mercury retrograde, I would say. Probably not as good as Mercury direct. But station is almost like there's a window in time. It's sort of this this flat zone. It's going to be very interesting. Very, very interesting. And then we have the moon the following day on the 4th in Gemini. That's going to be conjuncting Trump's sun. So we have Mercury direct on the 4th. And then we have the moon conjuncting Trump's sun, and then the sun in Scorpio right at 12 degrees. Mars will still be retrograde. Jupiter moving forward, Saturn moving forward, Uranus retrograde, Neptune going to move direct, but that's at the end of November, right on the 29th. And we have Pluto again finally moving forward. But the real day here is this this Mercury station, Libra. That's quite interesting. Very, very interesting. Very interesting. Let's check out what the Sabian symbol for that degree is. It's pretty close to my natal. Where are we? It's pretty close to my natal Venus. And I got the Sabian symbols up here. So let's go back. There we go. I bet you guys can even see this at this point. Oops. Let's go forward. Okay, so let's look at 25, 26 Libra. So 25 Libra, this is where Mercury is stationed. The sight of an autumn leaf brings to a pilgrim the sudden revelation of the mystery of life and death, the ability to discover in every experience a transcendent or cosmic meaning, the mind open to the multifarious wonders of natural processes, because it sees everything with fresh eyes, not only witnesses simple facts, but pierces through appearances and perceives the great rhythms of universal life. Without such a faculty, the aspirant to spiritual realities is always looking for elsewhere, yet the spirit life God is ever present, here and now, and every death is an omen of rebirth. Very interesting. At this 5th stage of the 41st fivefold sequence of phases of the cosmic process, the implications of the 4 preceding stages are brought to a new state of consciousness, which is truly the spiritual state. It is a state of clear seeing or seeing through. This world is illusion only to the individual who cannot see through its phenomena and fails to apprehend the reality these phenomena reveal even as they conceal it. So this is an interesting symbol for election day as Mercury is stationed, right? Station. Because you see that this thing, right, this leaf has become something else. And it's very Whitman-esque. Like this is a Walt Whitman kind of theme that through the leaf, like leaves of grass. When Whitman looked at that leaf of grass and it took him into every single living thing, right? Huge. This has a similar kind of potentiality. So if we can derive anything from this symbol, does it mean that we become how do I say this? Are we face to face with our mortality? And I'm not talking about individual mortality, but again, I'm talking about the United States, big election. Do we get face to face with our mortality? I mean, what would it take? What would it take for a country to reassemble itself and come back together again? It would literally have to be something along those lines where there is a kind of an awakening or a shocking truth or a cataclysmic experience where we stand across from each other and we kind of you ever get into an argument, a really deep argument with somebody, and it's somebody you love, and then all of a sudden somewhere in the argument you realize like who you become and who the other person has become, and you both have that realization simultaneously, and all of a sudden you step out of the argument like, what are we doing? What are we doing? Why are we doing this? How did we get here? And then the two people begin to back off and try to untangle how they got to that moment. And sometimes that can be very powerful and very successful. Is this where we're headed? Are we headed to that moment? Are we headed to that moment where we're looking at each other in each other's faces in ways that we can't even begin to comprehend? Like the moment we're about to plunge the knife into each other's backs. Is that where we're headed with this? And is it at that moment where all of a sudden we realize that something terrible is amiss here? Because the next symbol is quite interesting. And Mark Edmund Jones and L.C. Wheeler, they have a lot of these symbols where one thing turns into another. Like the Chanticleer singing at dawn turns into an eagle, and the eagle turns into a flag. So here's another one of these symbols. This is really about 2 days after the election, right? So we have station, Mercury station on election day. We have direct the day after, and they're both at 25, and 25 then goes to 26. And then this is what we have. An eagle and a large dove change into each other. The interaction of the spiritual will and of the love principle when critical needs arise. This sequence of symbols concluding the Libra phase of the cycle deals with problems met by the seeker for the fulfillment of a higher life of relationship. Implied here is a kind of yang-yin interplay when the circle encompassing both principles rotates fast and they appear to change into each other. That's like the two people that are having the argument, and then they step back and they're able to see into each other through the other's eyes, right? And it flips. Let's keep going with this. Consciousness operates beyond duality because the polarized energies of the soul or spirit, will and love, though ever distinct, work for a single purpose. This is the first stage of the 40-second fivefold set of symbolic phases. It represents a new higher approach to the use of polarized forces within the personality, which has been ever so little transformed and operating within a new framework. The key word adeptness fits this phase. but there are many levels of adeptship. Now, one of the things that I've been talking about is this idea of being adept, which has to do with Gemini and being able to like switch and flip and pivot. And all these symbols that are associated with the Via Combusta are very interesting. A lot of them are quite optimistic. An airplane sails high in the clear sky, transcendent realization. At Libra 28, a man becoming aware of spiritual forces surrounding and assisting him. Right, Libra 29, mankind's vast enduring effort to reach for knowledge, transferable from generation to generation. Libra 30, 3 mounds of knowledge on a philosopher's head, the fulfillment of man's power of understanding at whatever level of existence the person operates. And then we get into the Scorpio degrees. So these degrees with the Sabian symbols are quite interesting. And it all starts here at Libra 25. Like there's a transcendence here, right? There's this transcendent moment of consciousness. And then things begin to morph, right? An eagle and a large white dove change into each other, right? One becomes the other. The large white dove, the symbol of peace, becomes the eagle, can see through the intensity and the piercing vision of the eagle. And then the eagle, which is this symbol of freedom and this kind of, times predatory bird, becomes the dove and understands the gentle nature of the dove, right? And this keeps going. They morph back and forth. Now, there could be a negative association with this, possibly. Could be a negative association, and that the doves or the lovers of peace are the ones who become sort of the carriers of a higher knowledge. And supposedly the carriers of the higher knowledge morph into something else, right? They morph into something that is more of a symbol of hope. It's going to be this is interesting. These are very interesting degrees. And it really starts with this Mercury station on election day. Now, the retrograde here, this is like, here's station. It's also the last kind of day of the retrograde. So it's retrograde at 25, stations at 25, moves forward at 25, and then we go to 26, right? And we go to 26, we can even go to 27 because we go to the next degree. So this is going to be a very interesting time. Getting back to the blue moon, so my feeling of that full moon on Halloween is not positive. It is not positive. I actually think it's part of a continuum that is part of this because of how quickly these days are sequenced with one another. My feeling about Halloween with that second blue moon, to me, that feels very purge-like. It feels very, very purge-like. That's when you get in here, the Astro Cat's here. Come on, let's go. Get over here. Sunday night would not be Sunday night without the Astro Cat. There he is. So I don't get a good feeling. I'm just telling you, I don't get a good feeling about Halloween. How do you feel about Halloween? Do you feel the same way, huh? He feels the same way. Jasper's a cat of few words. So when he speaks, it's probably worth paying attention to. Let's see, where am I? Right here. Okay. So yeah, I don't get a good vibe about Halloween. I feel like to me that's purge territory. And that's, and if that's true, right? If that's true, and we go down that path, and we can already see the trail, right? The dangerous path that is already being carved out. What was it, Thursday night, that there was another suburb of Wisconsin, and these are suburbs now, and these forces of chaos are going into the suburbs now, and they're blaring, they're waking people up, they're shining bright lights. So the migration, they're trying to set up this idea now that the suburbs are the next place to create disturbances. And there's a term for it. It's called wilding. And, I started to watch this a couple of years ago, and I was looking at, newscast coming out of Chicago. And this is about 2 summers ago. And I remember talking with my buddy Mark over on Facebook, who lives in Chicago. I was, are you watching these things, man? Are you watching what's happening with these kids in Chicago? Like they are getting like kind of wildly organized in some ways, chaotically organized, and not doing great stuff. So this has been building for a while. But I feel like it feels to me like the blue moon, the second full moon on the 31st. I think it's a doozy. That's my take. That's my 2 cents. Is that I think it's pretty intense. Let's continue to go back to the chart of the moment, and it feels to me like it gets us right to the edge. You know, right to that razor's edge, where what we see what's becoming of our country and our world, and perhaps even the most staunch critics of the president, this regime, and maybe on the other side, you know, there's this potential for this veil to fall away because clearly there are a number of different things happening. There's a number of different levels going on. So, for instance, people being separated from their families and not being able to talk in a what's the word I'm looking for, meaningful, objective way with family members. But that's really like the least of our problems in a lot of ways. But it's because of that polarization that these other events can take place. Because we're bickering and we're being separated and we're being literally atomized, split apart, fractured and fractalized. So then we have all these other things going on, and the people who theoretically support this idea of the left cannot face the fact that the group that, again, I'm going to put it in quotes, that they support are the ones that are actively going out and destroying and burning and looting. Now, I have said that when these things occur, there are more forces at work than just one or two. Trust me, there are. And history has a precedent. And we've seen it before. So that said, though, I'm talking really about the most distilled and kind of simplistic version of what it represents. So would this be the moment in time when finally the people who are just again, I'm just throwing it out there, anti-Trump, TDS, anti-conservative, right? Will that be the moment all of a sudden they're stunned? That they are stunned. This is the blue moon now. This is the second full moon of the month happening on Halloween. Will they be stunned by what happens? Will it be so profound and potentially damaging, dangerous, explosive that we enter into that Mercury direct in a very different place? And what effect would this even have on an election? That's the other piece now that we have to take into consideration. Because if there is this kind of wild blue moon, full moon, Halloween, purge-like wilding energy, what impact will it have on the election? If there is so much chaos and so much damage and so much disruption on a station Mercury, could there be a delay to the election? That's another component here that's worth discussing. So here's what I think. I think it's going to boil down to this. I think one of those two realities will occur. Number one, and I think they're both going to be dependent on that blue moon, the Taurus moon on Halloween. I think that we're either going to have a moment where we're looking across from each other and it's like, what are we doing? How did we get here? And There's been too much polarization and too much doubling down for people to have that moment yet. They can't have it. But could it occur after a series of cataclysms? Absolutely, it could. And if it doesn't, could those series of cataclysms then actually delay the election? That's a possibility. With a station Mercury on the 3rd, that is a possibility. So we're either looking at something where people stop and, look at each other and say, how the hell did we get here? Or we're looking at the possibility of not having an election based upon what happens. And remember, that's on a Friday. That full moon is on, if I'm not mistaken, that is on a Friday, right? Jasper's restless. You are restless about this full moon. You are stalking. You stalking. Yeah, let me just go back and clarify. We just want to take one more look at that full moon. Saturday, right there. My bad. So it's Saturday. That's a Saturday night, man. Saturday night. And then we got Sunday, and then Monday, and then there it is. Boom. And that lunar energy really starts here, and it is really with us pretty much all the way through until Monday night. And then Tuesday, the Gemini moon kicks in. It's going to be intense. Keep in mind as well, Uranus is going to be right here. So we're going to have Uranus Sun opposition, Uranus on the moon. I think it's disruptive as hell. That's what I think. That's what I think. I also think we need to have a discussion about the New Madrid fault at some point, because I feel like the New Madrid is going to become a player. I don't know if it's on Halloween, but at some point we're going to have to deal with the New Madrid fault, and that is the Mississippi River. Will it happen prior to April 8th on 2024? Possibly. But they're already getting strange kinds of signals from the New Madrid. They're already starting to have these kinds of unusual sort of odors coming out of the Mississippi and around the New Madrid. I mean, this is a very destabilizing influence right there, correct? Because over here, look, there's Uranus right there, right? There's the sun right there, full opposition. We're dealing with moon conjunct here, going through the weekend. So this is going to be intense. I really feel like these days leading up here, because we also have Mars going retrograde and then conjuncting the moon during this time. So the final few days of October, I think, are probably these days right here are going to be the most important days, not only of the year, but maybe the next 10, the next 100. These are very intense days. Very, very powerful. Extremely powerful days. All right, let's get back to the chart of the moment. What's ahead? So we have Mercury retrograde. Let me just go back. We know Mercury's going to go retrograde, and it goes retrograde on Tuesday. Is that right? Let's just check that out. Wednesday. So Mercury retrograde, 11 degrees. So it starts off at 11 degrees, and we're not going to see Mercury direct until when? The day after the election. So this is interesting with the retrograde motion, and especially in Libra. So what's the Sabian symbol for that, since we're on the Sabian symbols tonight? It's going to be right, what 12? I think we got to go back here. Hold on. I think it's a 12 here. Hold on. No, I'm sorry. It's 11 Scorpio. That's my bad. My bad. It's not 11 Libra. It's 11 Scorpio. So where are we? Right here. Okay. Oh, this is interesting. All right. Let me go back here for a second. So here we are, October, and it's at Mercury is at 1140 right there. So we're going to read it at 12. An official embassy hall. This is interesting. Group consciousness is it flowers at the highest level in cultural interchanges between representatives of the elite of the ruling class. Interesting. This is phase 222, by the way, which means it is the 222nd day of the year, if I'm not mistaken. Interesting numbers, huh? At present, the largest unit of social organization is the nation. The symbol pictures the ruling class of such national wholes, displaying at least the superficial forms of a concern for establishing permanent relationships and peaceful cooperation. What is evoked is the value of meeting other people at the highest possible level of cultural interplay in full dress rather than with an everyday type of consciousness and behavior. Interesting. In contrast to the natural spontaneity of the rescue operation shown in the preceding symbol, we have here the image of a ritualized display of power, prestige, and wealth. Relationship has been made hierarchical and is institutionalized. Phase 222 tells us that this too is an essential feature in the development of rhythmic give and take in order to achieve global peace. Now, that is retrograde, right? That is retrograde. And that is, so the idea of what this symbol represents is this kind of power displayed at a high level. You know, it's the elite where they meet, what they talk about. They're not really addressing the everyday person, right? But when this goes retrograde, that symbol and that energy gets reversed. That's interesting. That's interesting. Okay, so I'm gonna phase shift here into the Mars discussion. All right, because I think this is a really because I'm going to talk about Benghazi, and I'm going to talk about the embassy in Benghazi in Libya, and this is where I think things are going to go. All right, and this is where Mercury is going to go retrograde. Okay, that's on Wednesday. Remember, an official embassy hall. All right, so let's. I'm going to take you into this very interesting story that I stumbled across, and let me see if I can find this thing. Remember now, when we talk about Mars retrograde, we're talking about military soldiers. And this is a strange story. And the reason why I think it could be valid because of the retrograde is because it has been talked about before, and I'll show you how and why. So some of you may be familiar with this. So this is Brayton. Now this guy is quite unusual. Alan Harrow. Now he calls himself Perot, but clearly his name is Parrot. CIA whistleblower tells Charles Woods, father of Tyrone Woods, killed in Benghazi, that Obama and Biden sent $152 billion, and that was to Iran as cover-up for the deaths of SEAL Team 6. Allen said that all the proof will come out, documents and audio. Okay, so here we go. Right, is this the October surprise we're talking about now? Mars retrograde. Full interview here about the blackmail extortion, 152 billion US dollars sent to Iran. We know that they sent the money to cover up the deaths of SEAL Team 6 by Obama and Biden administration. I'm hearing someone very close to President Trump is being briefed now. Okay, so I believe this is Benghazi. Am I right? Yep, killed in Benghazi. I'm going to play a little of this interview. So I'm going to have to go back and I'm going to have to do a screen share here. Okay. So give me 1 second. And to me, this really fits right into that kind of Mars retrograde wheelhouse. All right, let's go. And this guy is a trip, but I will tell you why I think he has some legitimacy. All right, let's go.
You'd think he'd know not to lie about something so obvious. He said it was a Muslim burial at sea. Nonsense. And so this big lie that you see, Biden, Hillary, and Clinton worked this agreement with Iran. They trusted Iran to move bin Laden to Pakistan. He did. He was there. But then they trusted Iran to keep him there. They moved him out back to Iran. And then the communication from Iran to Obama was, hey, we got your neck in a noose. Give us all this money. $152 billion. $2 billion on an airplane pallet was paid out for the secrets I wish to reveal now and to the president under the terms of misprision and treason. That is to say, this is a secret. These are secrets worth $152 billion paid by President Obama. And Vice President Biden paid with the blood.
Now, I think this is Tyrone Woods' father, if I'm not mistaken.
Of SEAL Team 6 when he had them killed.
It says blackmail and extortion then.
Blackmail and extortion.
Now,
Iran commandeered.
You have the documents to
yes.
prove this.
Yes.
Now,
Iran. Yes, sir.
Well, I was going to ask you, if you have those documents, are you willing to personally deliver those to President Trump if he were to provide the transportation and the guarantee of safety for you to do that?
Well, I'm not concerned about safety. There's always an invisible hand that protects us, and we're on the winning team. America's on the winning team.
Not one sparrow falls to the ground outside of God's will.
Yes. It would be my pleasure and my honor to bring this material to President Trump. There's a massive amount, terabytes, documents, video, audio. It needs to go to the president.
I will do everything that I can to get this video.
All right, so there you go. Now, look, this guy claims to be and have been a falconer and an asset. Now, when I say falconer, that means he works with falcons, birds of prey, which are very popular in the Middle East. Very, very popular. If you're a sheik, you're into falconry for the most part. Now, he doesn't look like in some ways maybe the most credible guy in the world. I mean, on some level, right? But who really is? Even the most credible looking people are rather incredulous to some degree. Now, the only thing that I have about this story that I'm wondering about, and that has to do with bin Laden and whether or not bin Laden was actually alive during this time. Because there are and have been rumors that bin Laden passed away before this moment in time. So, and then we have this idea that bin Laden was killed, and bin Laden was killed, of course, under Obama's watch. Well, we know that wasn't bin Laden. At least I do. That's ridiculous. That's some ridiculous shit. So here we go. Mars retrograde. This is your Mars retrograde moment. This is the father of Tyrone Woods. Again, if I'm not mistaken, he lost his son, who was one of the people who was guarding the embassy in Benghazi. Okay. So keep your eye on this. Now, it may just be another kind of hoaxy moment as Mr. Parrot kind of flew into the news cycle here. But again, if you go back and you look at those symbols where the eagle becomes a dove and dove becomes an eagle. Again, there's this kind of the relationship with the Aries, or the bird of prey, the sacred order of Q-tip. Oh, I love that. October surprise, Dan Quinn got fired, was the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons. Oh, that's interesting. That's pretty interesting, huh? You know what they, Dan, okay, I'm going to go one level. I'm going to go one level above you with some synchro-mysticism, Charles. You ready for this? Do you know what Dan Quinn's birthday is? 9/11. 9/11. Dan Quinn's birthday is 9/11. When did Benghazi happen? On 9/11. 9/11. How about that? Bet you didn't see that one coming, did you, Charles? Neither did I. So that's going to bear some witnessing, especially with Mars retrograde. I've been feeling this Mars retrograde and this Obama relation with the connection with Obama was going to click at some point. It was going to click. By the way, that was also the day that one of the Hillarys died, was on 9/11. Whoa, the simulation is getting freaky. It is getting freaky, right? It's totally freaky. The mighty Quinn, Dan Quinn, head coach, Atlanta Falcons. That guy's a falconer. Talking about Benghazi. Benghazi happening on 9/11, Dan Quinn's birthday. There you go. This is what I love about the so-called reality. You really can't script it any better in a lot of ways. So I'm going to do something real fast. Let me just do something real fast. On the fly. Okay. 9/11, 2012. 9/11, 2012. You know, when I was at Gaia, I'll show you the image in a second. It was like, I think they had to edit it out of my show. Hold on a second. And it was all about 9/11, 9/11 being the actual birth date of Sananda, right? Okay. So that day, let's see, we had Moon in Cancer. Mercury was in Virgo. Venus is in Leo, and tonight we have the Leo moon. Of course, Jupiter was in Gemini. Of course, Jupiter's in Gemini. Yep. And then Mars was in Scorpio at 12 degrees. 12 degrees. And what's interesting, remember now, what did we look at with Mercury? Mercury in Scorpio. What degree were we looking at? We were looking at 12, right? Officials at an embassy hall. Okay. So that's when Mercury goes retrograde, and Mars on 9/11 was at, well, it's at, let's see, it's at 12 exact. It's at 12 exact. So it's the same degree. It's that officials at an embassy hall. And that's where Mercury's going to go retrograde. It is going to go fucking retrograde where Mars was in Scorpio on Benghazi 2012. Whoa. How about that? Saturn was at 27 Libra on that day. And remember, those final degrees of Libra, as we looked at, are extremely heightened degrees. And we see Mercury go direct at 25, stations at 20, stations at 25, goes direct at 25, and then moving to 26 and then 27. Very, 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 very interesting. And if you look at Uranus, see, this is interesting too. I'll show you guys. Check it out. Okay, so let's go back to 2012. All right, all these outer planets are retrograde. Now Saturn was direct, but look, we have Uranus in what sign? Aries. Neptune in Pisces, very early on, and Pluto retrograde. All the outer planets are retrograde, meaning at some point, right? At some point, the conditions that were in effect during that time with the outer planets would move forward and address themselves. I think that's the big news here. And then we have that square with Uranus and Pluto. Look at that right there at 7 degrees. I think this is big news. I think this is big news. And whether or not Mr. Parrot sings, it sounds like that's what he's doing. There's something in the air about this. Something is in the air about this. And I believe this is it. I think we're going to get into the October surprise here. I think this is it. I think Benghazi's coming back. And this strange kind of encounter with this falconer, this Mr. Parrot. He calls himself Perot. I guess like Ross Perot. I don't know. But I think there's a there. I think there's a there. And the there that's there is that Mars, where Mars is at Scorpio, the same degree essentially, right? Official at an embassy hall. There we go. Let's see. Hello, J.R. Williams. Hello. Let's see, but 9 is the number of death. Okay. All right. There we go. So keep your eyes peeled. Keep your eyes peeled on this upcoming event. All right. I wanted to talk a little bit about the moon, and then I think I'm probably going to shut her down a little bit early. So the moon is an interesting kind of phenomena to encounter, and we know that the moon is connected to the emotions, right? Emotions, upbringing, fourth house, the subconscious, things like that. And I've really seen the moon in effect in a person's chart. And I'll give you an example before I go. Well, as I go further, I'll show you the example, but not yet. We also know that there's a lot of strange anomalies with the moon. And there are people when I talk about astrology and the moon, they're like, I don't know, man. I don't know about the moon. I don't know if it's real. It may be a reflection, or it was put here, and it's artificial. Of all the astrological kinds of luminaries and symbols, the moon is the one, of course it would be the moon, that garners the most amount of what I call empirical or ontological suspicion, right? Especially if you're out into, far out lunar conspiracy land. John Levi just did a video recently where it seems as if the Earth is being actually reflected into the moon. Fascinating. Some guy found that all the continents are lined up by these craters, and that, our reality is that we're living in one of these craters as a reflect. I mean, there's some wild stuff that goes along with this idea of the moon. Some people believe that it was pulled here, that it keeps us ingrained in some level of consciousness or lack thereof It locks us in. It's a prison of some sort. There's a lot of speculation about the moon and what its role is. And some people think it's made of cheese. Not really. But I guess they might. I don't know. The big wedge of cheese. So I wanted to kind of look at the moon from that context, right? To put it sort of under the microscope in a way that astrologically we have to begin to think about not just the moon, but a lot of these other so-called luminaries in perhaps a more psychological or archetypal sense in what it means in terms of how a chart is interpreted and why it's interpreted in a certain way. Okay, so I kind of want to go down that path, and I'm going to show you some unusual things about the moon, and they may be things you might know or may not know. And one of them does have to do with the intelligence agency, right? The intelligence agencies. And a certain man who was responsible in large part for what we call remote viewing. And his name is Ingo Swann. And Ingo Swann was an art dealer and a psychic. And he was apparently a very, very good psychic. And I ran across an excerpt from from his book. He wrote a book. It's a pretty interesting book. And he gets into remote viewing the dark side of the moon. So there we go. There it is. And his book is called Penetration. So this is a website, Steam It Remote Viewing hyphen, and there's the code. I'll leave the link if you want to read more about it. So Ingo Swann was, in my estimation, the real deal. Like, he was able to figure out how to functionally remote view by taking a lot of the kind of how do I say this, the speculative phenomena out of it, like just using raw coordinates. That's really what he focused on, was raw coordinates. That's it, just the coordinates. And then bringing people into what they call the cool down phase, so that they could begin to get into a different state. What was it? They get into delta. I think they'd get into delta state. And then with those coordinates that they were given, they begin to sketch out what those coordinates were. And they had these protocols, and he was the guy that set up the protocols. So these declassified CIA documents came out. And then apparently Swann and this guy, Harold Sherman, I guess if you can trust the CIA, accurately detailed the composition, atmosphere, and structure of Jupiter 600 million kilometers from the Earth. The classified documents showed that CIA agents involved in the psi experiments conducted in the early 70s were markedly impressed by Swann's Arvian and psychokinetic abilities. In his book, Penetration, Swann recounts his involvement in remote viewing the dark side of the moon in 1975. A top secret assignment offered to him by an unnamed shadow agency of the U.S. government. In part 2, we'll explore more contentious claim made by Swann dealing with this top secret mission to remote view the dark side of the moon. So this gets into some of the theoretical science behind the moon. Okay. So in 1975, several years after the Jupiter viewing, Swann claims he's introduced to an unnamed shadow group through his CIA connections. Even before making contact with the group, he's sworn to secrecy and told by his CIA contact not to ask any questions of these people, but that they have special interest in his remote viewing capabilities. A man using the codename Axelrod eventually calls Swann and invites him to DC. Axelrod is described as something akin to a male model, a term that's often used in conjunction with myself as well, by the way, and is accompanied by another agent who closely resembles Axelrod. Swann nicknames them the twins. Again, Swann is warned not to speak of any of this to anyone if he accepts the assignment. Swann admits that at first he was most intrigued by the $1,000 per day compensation. Back then, $1,000 meant something. Not long after initial contact, you should drop the ly there, is made, Swann is quickly hooded and whisked away to an undisclosed underground location somewhere near the capital. Knowing nothing of the assignment, Swann assumes that he will be asked to use his skills to remote view enemy targets, such as the Soviets or the Chinese. The objective of the mission is never really revealed to Swann, but he's told he'll be tasked with remote viewing the moon over the course of several days. For each session, Swann is given coordinates on the moon based on longitude and latitude, and he projects himself to the desired locations of the moon's surface. Agent Axelrod accompanies Swann during every session, providing coordinates, asking questions from time to time, monitoring Swann's progress of the viewings. So session 1.1, lunar location 1, tracks on the moon's surface. What they actually look like are rows of largish tractor treads, but I don't understand how this could be, so they must be something I don't understand. Near a cliff, some kind, rising upward quite high and made of some kind of dark rock. It has some kind of shiny quality to it, something like obsidian, whitish, fluffy sand. There are patterns in the sand like dunes, as if wind had made some kind of pattern. Away from the cliff, there's a broad expanse. Believes he is mistaken and is remote viewing a location on Earth. Can sense some sort of atmosphere. Session 1.2, Swann stops the session abruptly because, again, he believes he must be on Earth and not the moon. Takes break from RV session. Session 1.3, lunar location 2. Located inside a crater, greenish haze, like a light of some kind. Beyond the greenish haze, all around is dark. Sees actual rows of lights, sort of like lights at football arenas, high up. Banks of them, up on towers of some kind. Have the Russians built a moon base or something? Is that what I am supposed to be remote viewing? Session 1.4, lunar location 2, resumed. Greenish lights seem diffused as if there's a lot of fog, dust floating in the air. There's a thumping noise. Has better view of one of the light towers this time. Tower appears to be built by some narrow struts, some kind of like pencils, like prefab stuff. Estimate towers are 100 feet tall. Tractor tread marks everywhere. Views a glimpse of crater's edge with a very large tower on it. Yes, big, really big. About the size of the UN building in New York. 39 floors. Swann begins to wonder if this is more than a moon base, but the stuff is big equipment. Comes realization that what he's viewing is not from Earth. I was now completely certain that I was physically present in some kind of ultra secret place, and that the mission of this place was to sort out extraterrestrial matters. I knew that NASA must have photographic evidence of activities on the moon which have already confirmed the presence of extraterrestrial activity there. As Swann slowly becomes aware of the implications of what he's glimpsed in his viewings and the nature of his assignment, he begins to break down emotionally and needs time to take it all in. He experiences some kind of an emotional roller coaster from shock and disbelief to elation, sadness and anger. He lashes out at his handlers, as well as demanding to know why they need him at all. Why did they just send another manned mission to the moon? It's not long before Swann starts piecing together the situation in his mind. Unless I can't believe this, unless they somehow have told you to stay away and somehow shown you they mean it. They are not friendly, are they? And these are capital letters. Are they, Axel? So the only major way now to spy on those guys is to resort to psychic abilities. which the mainstream of our great nation makes a special effort to discredit. What a gas. What a complete gas. He also suspects the mission is partly driven by a fear that the Soviets might be using their own psychics to gather psychic moon information ahead of the US. His mind reeling, Swann takes another break as the experience proves to be more than he could have imagined. Intending to take a short power nap, Swann passes out for 6 hours before they attempt another RV session. Session 2, multiple lunar locations. At a number of locations, nothing much to see except moonscapes. Other locations proved confusing, with Swann drawing multiple sketches of things he could not wrap his head around. I found towers, machinery, lights of different colors, strange-looking buildings. I found bridges whose function I couldn't figure out. One of them just arched out and never landed anywhere. There were a lot of domes of various sizes, round things like small saucers with windows. These were stored next to crater sides, sometimes in caves. Sometimes it would look like hangars. I had problems estimating sizes, but some of the things were very large. I found long tube-like things, machinery, tractor-like things going up and down hills, straight roads extending some miles, obelisks, which had no apparent function. There were large platforms on domes, large cross-like structures, sounding very Tartarian to me at this point, by the way. Holes being dug into craters and floors, obviously having to do with some kind of mining or earth-moving operations. There were nets over craters, houses in which someone obviously lived, except I couldn't see who, save in one case. In that case, I saw some kind of people busy at work on something I could not figure out. The place was dark. The air was filled with a fine dust, and there was some kind of illumination, like a dark lime green fog or mist. The thing about them was that they were human or looked exactly like us. They were all males, as I could well see, since they were all butt-ass naked. I had absolutely no idea why. They seemed to be digging into a hillside or a cliff. As I described, they must have some way of creating a good environment, warm with air in it. But why would they be going around naked? No answer was forthcoming to this self-question. What Swann describes next is something that he found deeply disturbing. While viewing humanoid activity, he claims they became aware of his psychic penetration. They turned and looked at him as though they could feel some sort of dimensional disruption taking place. But being there in my psychic state, as I felt I was, some of those guys started talking excitedly and gesticulating. Two of them pointed in my direction. I immediately felt like running away and hiding, which I guess I psychically did since I lost sight of the particular imaging. I guess he felt like the naked one at that point. I think they've spotted me, Axel. They were pointing at me, I think. How could they do that unless they have some kind of high psychic perceptions too? Axel said in a calm, low voice. I hardly heard it at first. Please, quickly, come away from that place. My eyes were as wide as understanding drained in. You already know they are psychic, don't you? Axel raised his eyebrows and gave a deep sigh. Swann felt he was in danger and vocally raised concerns about whether or not the alien beings would come after him and want to kill him for his psychic intrusions. At this point, Agent Axelrod admits the humanoids Swann observed had certain things, capabilities that they were trying to get a better understanding of. But he assured Swann that these were nothing to suggest he would become a target of these beings. Swann repeatedly asked Axelrod to elaborate and explain what's known about these beings and the operation, but he's tight-lipped and evasive. He would neither confirm nor deny. They spoke a little more about the nature of psi, mostly Swann trying to comprehend what he had felt when the humanoids had spotted him. Rather felt his presence. When the session was over, the assignment was too. Swann would be hooded once again, taken away in a chopper, and driven back by his twin, there's that Gemini thing, escorts, back into the heart of the U.S. Capitol, and that was it. After returning to his home in New York, Ingo Swann spent several days recovering from his experience. battling his paranoia and trying to come to terms with what he had witnessed. There's no doubt elements of Swann's claims that sound ridiculous to some. Unlike Swann's RVing of Jupiter, these claims are not part of the CIA/US Gov research into psi and cannot be verified in any CIA documents or disclosures. Psychic, telepathic, humanoid males, completely naked, working inside of an artificial environment, busily working on some unknown project. The apparent mining activities by an alien species that has been covered up for almost 4 decades is also difficult for most people to fathom or to take seriously. Yet, is there any evidence that corroborates these far claims of psychic origins? The short answer is no, or at least nothing conclusive. However, similar claims have been made of structures on the moon's surface, and not only on the far side, but the near side as well. Some of the evidence comes from NASA's own photographic library collection of the Apollo missions. Former NASA scientists and independent observations not connected to government agencies. Okay, so here's some of the sources. All right, some PDF stuff. So I thought this to be quite interesting on a number of levels, because one of the things that Swann is actually talking about are some of the qualities that we associate with the moon. Number one, we think of the moon as having some kind of intuitive or empathic or instinctual / emotional presence, right? I mean, inside of the chart, when we think of intuition, or at least I do, I think of the moon. I think of hunches. I think of the subconscious, that thing that operates outside of the Apollonian awareness. And it's quite interesting that the missions that they sent to the moon were the Apollo missions, right? The sun god, Apollo, he's the sun god he takes the sun and rides the chariot of the sun across the sky. So they bring the sun god to illuminate the moon, theoretically, right? So to bring reason, logic, ration, science to whatever that story was all about. But at least in name, we have the merging of the Apollonian, Apollo, and the Dionysian, which is the lunar side or the moon. So there, Swann encounters something that, for all intents and purposes, sounds crazy. And that's another thing we think about the moon. We think about the moon in terms of lunacy and how the full moon has an impact and effect on people. And, it does in a lot of ways. They've been able to actually chart how, fluids are more abundant in the body. People, dentists, doctors who are in the know, they don't like to do surgeries on full moons. There's more fluid, right? There's a greater potential for bleeding and bleeding out during a full moon. So there's some interesting correlations there, especially the lunacy piece. That's unusual, right? That's very, very unusual. So even Swann himself, somebody who had an ability to grasp other worlds, found something that was highly unusual, even when it comes to Ingo Swann. So I wanted to bring that up because I think it's interesting. Whether you buy into it or not, well, now you're into the territory of the moon. You're into the atmosphere of the moon. But I did want to bring up some other things here, and it has to do with some photos, right? And this is very unusual. This has to deal with where did it go? I think it's over. Oh gosh, I just had this damn thing up here. Okay, I think it's on the other. Oh, here it is. Yes. All right. Structures on the moon. So there are lots and lots of photographs of these so-called structures on the moon. And when I saw Bill Cooper for the first and only time, and that was in the year 1990 in Olympia, Washington, he had a lot of these pictures of these structures on the moon, and he was trying to tie them in to Bill Cooper. When I saw Bill Cooper, was not a finished product by any stretch. Like Bill Cooper was still kind of etching out who he was going to become. This is pretty early in his game. Behold a Pale Horse had just come out. I think I got one of the first copies. And so he was looking at the Zapruder film. We spent a lot of time looking at kind of this enhanced version of the Zapruder film. And when I say enhanced, that was by 1990 standards, not by, Jay Weidner standards. By the way, Jay Weidner factors into this story as well. And then we spent a lot of time looking at these anomalous structures on the moon. Like, what the fuck are they? How did they get there? So that was when I first kind of got tuned in or dialed into these structures, right? And you start to see some of these things. And Richard Hoagland, who, of course, wrote the book, The Monuments of Mars. So here we go. Here's the pyramids of Giza. Richard Hoagland and Jay Weidner were partners at one point in time. They were partners and they had a falling out. And I'll get into that a little bit. It's not like it's not public knowledge. So these are some of these anomalies, right? That they are sort of looking at here on the moon. The stuff that's really out there. I mean, again, there are more moon anomalies. I mean, what is this stuff, right? I mean, again, are we dealing with another NASA scam? Or are these, these look like roads, they look like cities, So what is this? This is the Pyramid of Mexico. What is this? Uruguay. Okay, one is the Pyramid of Mexico, the other is Uruguay, Iraq, Chaco Canyon. So are these fuzzy images? Are they these fuzzy replications of these structures on the Earth? Is that what we're looking at? Then we have the potential for alien structures on the moon. Right. We have a collection of highly geometric shapes also found on the moon. But what really grabbed me were these towers. And then like giant mining operations, this collection of perpendicular shapes appear like machinery. And this is what Ingo Swann is talking about. I wish I could make this bigger. From this angle, this object figure 12 looks like a square-shaped military tank. You can kind of see that there. I mean, is this the Earth? I mean, are we looking at Afghanistan? And this is what this is referring to, right? This is this kind of machinery, like this harvester. Is this another, hoax land here? Then we have this giant wheel, right, that's on the moon. Looking somewhat like a giant Ferris wheel. And then we have potentially these structures that look like, and I remember seeing these again back in 1990. And these are really unusual, like, structures. Then we have craters and what looks like a tree. That's funny because I saw Bill Cooper at Evergreen College. So, look, you could maybe make a case. You could make a case that maybe what we're looking at is potentially reordered sorts of images from Earth transposed to the lunar surface vis-a-vis NASA. Okay. That's possible. That is possible. But I remember, actually seeing a lot of these images when, Cooper was doing his thing, and they look very unusual. So the Jay and Richard Hoagland stories that they used to collaborate, and they were both using a lot of these photos that Richard and Jay had come across. And they were the ones that were, and I think these were some of the images that Bill Cooper might have been using too. And that they were some of the images that had these tall, like obelisk-like structures, tall buildings, the tracks. So they were both, kind of working together. And then Jay had a falling out with Richard. And I don't know what the exact details are. I never really pressed Jay on them, but he and Richard went like this, right? So the reason why Jay clicked into the Stanley Kubrick stuff was because the photos that Richard had and Jay had, they were supposedly working on together, that those photos had almost like a watermark, like a fingerprint, and it was something called was it front screen projection or front lens projection, and it's a very very specific kind of photography, very very specific. And when he was watching 2001: A Space Odyssey, he realized that Kubrick was using the same front screen or front lens projection that he noticed with those images that he and Richard had been looking at from the moon. Well, isn't that interesting? There is only one person in the world, really, directorially, who was capable of that. That was Stanley Kubrick. So what was really going on here, right? Was Kubrick recreating the moon? Was he basically leaving clues? Because what he would wind up doing was he would, ultimately wind up directing the Apollo moon flights, right? That's the idea. And when you get into The Shining, that's what Kubrick is saying. He's basically saying, look, all that moon stuff, the flight to the moon, it's a fairy tale. And Jay breaks that down, I think, great, in fantastic fashion. And the reason why I think it makes total sense is because Stanley Kubrick's version of The Shining is nothing like the book. And Stephen King lamented it. Shining fans lamented it. And Kubrick is telling a story. He is telling a story. Jay believes about his involvement in actually filming the fake moon landings. Now, that said, that doesn't explain for how the front screen projection images that Jay noticed with those anomalous objects in the moon were matching what Kubrick was doing with both 2001 and potentially even the moon, the moon movies. Okay, so here's what I think. Okay, I think that Kubrick directed the first moon landing. That's what I think. I think he directed the first moon landing. I don't think he directed any of the others after that. That's my sense. Okay. And I think that there were these pictures. I don't know how Jay and Richard got a hold of these pictures, but I don't believe that Stanley Kubrick was responsible for the front screen projected images that Jay and Richard were using to look at these anomalous objects on the moon. I don't think he had anything to do with that. But I do think that he was leaving clues when he did shoot 2001. And by the way, he shot 2001 in England, and because that's where he's from. And there were representatives of NASA there during the filming of 2001. So I think Stanley Kubrick, was leaving clues, obviously. But I don't think he was the one that was taking the images of I think he applied the front projection later to somehow corroborate something. That's my sense. Okay, so if we have Ingo Swann theoretically, psychically remote viewing and going to the moon, if you can, buy into that, you don't have to. And if you have people like Jay and Richard who are working off of these images, just like Bill Cooper was, and then you have the connection between the front screen projection with Kubrick and 2001 and the first moon landing, right? And then Kubrick may be leaving a clue, not just about the moon landing, but because that's how Jay made the correlation, right? It wasn't the moon landing. It was the image that he and Richard were using. So if you put those things together, there's a there. Okay. There's a there. Now, again, we get into this whole other, where, it's just a reflection. It's a hologram. It's a giant chunk of steel. Yeah, I think it was, who was it? The Russians or the Chinese fired a missile onto it, banged it like a gong. Some people say it's filled with water. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of anomalies with, and it wouldn't be the moon if we didn't ask questions about it now, would it? Right? I mean, sometimes we ask questions about the sun, but not as much about the moon. So, given all of that, how does the moon play a role in astrology? I think it's a really good question to ask. And to answer that question, we have to, kind of reassemble astrology in general, right? And that the planets, again, these luminaries are theoretically geocosmic forces that have these influences upon us. Like Mars is really close right now. We'd be looking at this intensity of this luminary. In fact, you could look up in the sky last week when the moon was full, and you could see Mars right above the moon. They were just like right there, right? I mean, it was there. And we know that the moon was in Aries. We know that Mars is in Aries. So, at least conventionally from the tropical side of things, right? So, but if this is the case with the moon, and that it might be something quite different than we might suspect. It might be quite different than, say, Jupiter or Saturn or Mars or whatever. And even some people will say, well, those things don't exist either. There's no such thing as space. It's all a bunch of bullshit. Well, there are people out there that think that and believe that. I don't happen to be one of them, by the way. So then how does the moon operate? And how does the moon work? Well, and to that degree, how does astrology work on some level? And one of the things that I have come up against and with and through is there's some deeper level to astrology that I would call transarchetypal, meaning that there are images and symbols that we associate with astrology that resonate on an archetypal level. But then there's something else, right? And I've encountered this something else again and again and again. And I'm going to show you how. I'm going to give you an exact example. Okay. So on Friday, I was doing a session with a woman, and her moon is in Pisces, and she was born pretty much in a new moon. It's in the third house, and she has a yod in her chart with Pluto and Neptune. Okay. So Pluto and Neptune were sextile with the baby boomers and then the post baby boomers, right? So with the baby boomers, Pluto was in Leo, Neptune was in Libra. Post baby boomers, Pluto is in Virgo, Neptune's in Scorpio. You see, I think there's a distinct difference between the baby boomers and then that generation. I don't think you can lump the Neptune and Scorpio and the Pluto and Virgo people together with the baby boomers. You can't, because the three outer planets are quite different, I mean, during the baby boom generation, you get Uranus in Gemini, Uranus in Cancer, Uranus in Leo towards the end. And then, the post baby boomers, you get Uranus in Virgo, Pluto in Virgo, and Neptune in Scorpio. It's a very different outer planet astrological kind of culture set. I don't think they're related. Really, I don't. So for me, like the sort of the cutoff for the baby boomers are that last generation is Uranus and Leo. That for me, that's my cutoff, right? Once it moves into Virgo and once it moves into that conjunction with Pluto and then Neptune and Scorpio, it's a different generation. And I think it's unfair to lump that group in with the baby. And I'm not dissing the baby boomers. It's a very creative generation in a lot of ways. So anyway, she was part of that generation. Pluto, Neptune, sextile, right? You got to have a sextile to have a yod, and perfect yod to the moon. Okay, in Pisces. And she wants to write a book, right? She wants to write a book. She doesn't feel complete until she writes a book. And, I'm looking at her chart, I'm working with her chart, and I'm saying, look, the book has to write itself. for you. This is a bright woman, Mercury in Aquarius, conjunct Venus, Sun in Aquarius, very bright woman. But in the third house, which is communication and writing, and you have the moon there, like especially in Pisces, and you have a yod, and with Neptune transiting on that moon, it's like that book has to write itself, so you have to get into a state. You have to get into a state of mind or a state of being in order to kind of bring the kind of sort of the muses in to have this thing written. Okay. And her Pluto's in the 8th house, her Neptune in the 10th house. In Pluto in Leo, 8th house, we're talking ancestral. And she works with these ancestors. She does a lot of circle work and sort of a very interesting person. And anyway, I want to show you what the Sabian symbol for her moon was, which is to me why, and this is sort of the, how do I say, the trans-archetypal kind of definition or the trans-archetypal explanation of astrology. Because we know what an archetype is. It's this deep cultural, psychological cipher, right? We know what an archetype is. And for me, when it becomes trans-archetypal, it becomes something that goes beyond the archetype, and then it almost becomes a living embodiment of a thing itself. Okay. To me, this is how astrology functions in a lot of ways. And because we've been working with these energies and these symbols and these interpretations for such a long period of time, they become woven into the tapestry of our own unconscious and what I would call our own supra-conscious. Okay. All right. So I'm going to show you the symbol for her moon. It's quite interesting. All right, come on now. Feeds don't fail me now. Here we go. Let's reload this page. I've got this Ian Brown song in my head now. Oh, you're being just a pain in the ass, aren't you? The moon does not want to reveal its secrets to me, apparently. I got one way to skin your cat, moon. I got more than one way to skin your cat. Okay. Oh, yes. Oh, yes, I do. Okay, here we go. So what I was referring to in terms of the book writing itself. This is the degree of her moon. In the quiet of his study, a creative individual experiences a flow of inspiration. Reliance upon one's inner source of inspiration or guidance. So essentially, what this degree of the moon is talking about, again in Pisces, in this last scene of the great ritual of cyclic existence, we are dealing with various aspects of the processes that enables man to confirm, formulate, perpetuate the original creative impulse, which has become self-actualized in a myriad of ways throughout the cycle. Short or long as the cycle may be, this first symbol strikes the keynote of truly significant creative processes. Their source is above, beyond, but also around the individual creator. The inspiration, original and individual, though it may be, is given a form which is conditioned by the cultural, social, and religious background of the creative person. In a sense, every genius merely records an answer to the needs of his time. The hands that write, play an instrument, or mold plastic material are his own. The urge or drive back of the flow of inspiration has arisen in the vast collective mind of man. This is the first of the 70th series of 5 symbols. The individual aspect of the creative process is emphasized as the individual's need for concentration and at least inner quiet. He must have faith in his own subjective strength, right? This was the degree of her moon right there. Bang, bang on, right? Bang on. And this was the focal point of the yod. And she came to me because she wanted to try to figure out how to write this book. And I said, you have got to be able to have the book write itself. And there it was. There it was. So the reason I'm really bringing this up is because in some ways it's a validation of the fucking moon, right? It's a and I've seen this again and again and again and again, right? So if the moon is a hologram, or the moon is a big chunk of steel, or the moon is a reflection, or whatever the things that we think the moon is or isn't, I've done too much work astrologically to understand the resonance of this goddamn moon. All right, it is an active participant in each and everyone's chart. I guarantee you that. And the one time I really, at a very personal level, that this idea of the moon really kind of drilled itself into my head has to do with a particular person that I know fairly well. Okay. And this person has their moon conjunct their midheaven. And on the other side of the midheaven is Saturn. So we have a moon Saturn conjunction in Gemini on the midheaven. Now, for this person, their mother played a very, very specific role in their life and was the teacher for this person, who's a woman. Okay. And then the mother passed away, right? And this person was fairly young. And guess what? Passed away just prior to the Saturn return, first Saturn return. So this person eventually winds up going to, now, this is a person who also has the South Node, right? The South Node in the 10th house. It's kind of an interesting thing, right? Moon on the midheaven, right square in the midheaven, conjunct Saturn, South Node, 10th house. So they wind up working for a company that is involved in, guess what? Mothers and babies. Mothers and babies. They go in that front door to that business as an associate, a marketing associate. And they left the front door as a VP. And guess what? It only took that person roughly 5 years, 4 to 5 years, to go from a market associate to a VP. That's a rocket ride. That's a rocket ride. And then that person continued once they left that position to go to other jobs, right? They went to other jobs, well-paying jobs, high-level jobs. None of them were as nearly as successful as the one that involved the moon and mothers and this idea of childbirth, and in Gemini, the sharing of information through a website. They were never able to hit that success note in the same way ever again. Why was that? Well, because the South Node says you shouldn't be up in your 10th house, really. Where you need to be is down in your 4th house, because that's where you're going to anchor in this lifetime. Working out of home can be fine, right? True Node, Capricorn, Fourth house, work out of your home, be the CEO mother in your home. But once they left the auspice of the moon, right, that business that has to do with the life cycle and gestation and the embryonic state and mothers and and the dissemination of information, they were never as successful again. The moon protected them as they launched themselves into that 10th house environment where, for all intents and purposes, they really were, not supposed to go, right? Very interesting. So I've encountered the astrological resonance of the moon over and over and over again, from a personal level, deeply personal level, to a client-based level. So in astrology, the moon is about as real as it gets. It's about as real and profound as it gets. And quite often I think it's a bit overlooked astrologically, to be honest with you. And can use some very interesting work. There's a lot of work that could be done with the moon, the nodes, black moon Lilith, and even in the progressed chart. When the progressed moon changes signs, boy, you feel it. You feel it almost to the day. When my moon went from Libra, progressed Libra, into progressed Scorpio, I got involved with a Scorpio woman whose sun was conjunct within 2 degrees of my new progressed moon, almost to the day. Okay. So there's another chapter that unfolds with the moon, through the progressed chart. It's an important one because the moon changes signs every 2 years with the progressed chart. And that's an aspect or phase that I highly recommend that you explore when you delve into the progressed chart. It's probably, I think, maybe the most important one, other than when a major planet changes signs. Those are big. That's a big deal. And you also want to look at the progressed chart as it relates to the natal chart. When my progressed sun hit 28 Scorpio, 20 is where it is now, it hit my natal ascendant. And that was kind of a breakthrough for me in some ways. I was finally, after, all these years, my progressed sun was finally moving out of my progressed, onto my natal ascendant. So there's a lot of interesting correlations with the progressed chart, especially when these major kinds of transits occur. In particular, the moon. 2 years. It takes 2 years for a moon to change sign. So what I tried to do tonight was give you some other things to think about with the moon. The idea that, that there are these, and that's what makes it the moon. I mean, that's what makes it the moon, because there are all these ideas about what it is or what it isn't. And I think that lends to the aura and the mystery of it. And that it is one of the oddest and strangest kinds of anomalies we deal with. Like, how close is it really? How far is it? How far away is it? It sets up there's more questions to the moon than there are answers. And ultimately, I think that's the way it should be. Okay. I'm out of here. Thanks for being here tonight. 2 hours, 3 minutes, 24 seconds. Not bad. Right? Not bad. I'll be back tomorrow with 15 minutes of flame. We may have some off-the-chain dreams. I hope so. I hope you have off-the-chain dreams. Good ones. I'll be back tomorrow, 15 minutes of flame. And I did a presentation. By the way, Masaki, I guess he has his presentation up now. Masaki, did you put that up? I think Masaki is still in the chat, right? I think he's still in chat. Masaki, you're a great president. You got to find Masaki's presentation. Fantastic. So go find that. I think it's for purchase. And I did a presentation. I'm gonna try to work on that this week and put that up. Wow, that really high tech for night. So I'm sorry. No, they didn't go to the moon in 69. They did not go to the moon. We know. I think we can agree on that. I think we can agree that they didn't go to the moon in 69. And I think we can agree that Kubrick was there to produce the thing, right? I think we kind of agree on that. And at the same time, there's a lot more with the moon that we may not be able to agree upon. And for me, it's really okay. All right. Use your head in order to discern what's real, your heart to set what's possible. Chatlandia, you take care of yourself. And I'll see y'all tomorrow.